Here's a thread from Turfin9000 on Twitter. The transing of language. A thread. Language allows the framing of a debate, and TRAs have been quick to dictate the terms of the debate. Opposing gender ideology means pushing back against terms which have been normalized and accepted by major institutions. Number 1. Assigned X at birth. This phrase's stupidity is only rivaled by its current ubiquity. Major medical bodies and academics routinely use it with no criticism, despite its obvious unscientific nature. So what's wrong with this phrase? Gender, or rather sex, is decided at conception. Sex is observed and recorded, and this happens mostly before birth, around 20 weeks in utero. It can also be determined by genetic testing. Anyone who has had a baby can tell you this, but apparently medical experts have forgotten. The phrase assigned is clever, too. It makes it sound as if doctors are arbitrarily plucking a sex from the air with no real knowledge. In reality, external presentation of sexual characteristics is accurate in 99% of cases. Do not accept this phrase. Preferred pronouns. A preference is something someone would like to have. I prefer white to red wine, for instance. Pronouns, though, are demanded, in some cases, Canada, at the point of legal action of the loss of employment. They are demanded pronouns, not preferred. My pronouns are. Nobody owns a part of speech. Nobody owns verbs or nouns or adjectives. The only word we have ownership of is our own proper noun, for example, our name. Stating what your pronouns are is as nonsensical as stating that my adjectives are hot and intelligent. Dead name. Calling someone by their old name. When we call Trump Drumpf or reveal any other celeb's real name, we are not accused of dead naming. The pseudo-cult nature of the trans movement becomes clear when we realize they consider the old self to be dead. The phrase dead naming sounds sinister and serious, as you have committed a terrible crime, and thus it is also a way to create support and sympathy for your position and thus control what other people can say. Misnaming would not have the same impact. Live as a woman. In the good old days, transsexuals were required to, for 2 years, live as a woman. What does it mean to live as a woman? For most of these men, it meant wearing skirts, lipstick, and wigs and calling themselves Crystal. But how would a woman live as a man? Wear jeans, avoid makeup, and have short hair? A lot of women, then, it seems, already live as men, and it is unremarkable to most. Living as a woman can only mean conforming to stereotypes. What else could it mean? Gender-affirming care. This curious phrase assumes that the chosen sex of an individual, as opposed to their biological sex, is the real one, and that a doctor's job is to help them arrive there through the use of artificial hormones and surgery. This would be a little bit like calling cosmetic surgery beauty-affirming care. That is to say, your new face is your true face and has always been your true face. All it needed was an expensive surgeon to uncover it. Top surgery. A bit like calling a pedophile a minor attracted person. This phase attempts to disguise the horror of the reality. Top surgery is a double mastectomy and should always be called that. Bottom surgery. Where to start with this one? For men, total castration, removal of testicles, sterilization, cutting out parts of the penis, and inverting the skin of the penis into an artificially created cavity wound, which has to be forced open so it won't heal closed. For women, the attachment of a flesh tube that cannot function as anything but an ornament, the skin of which is taken from the forearm in a grotesque and barbaric surgery that has huge complication rates. In some cases, the vagina is raked shut. The horrors of these two surgeries would have taken many more tweets to explain, but let's stop euphemistically calling them bottom surgery. Sex reassignment surgery presupposes that sex is assigned in the first place, that a mistake happened in the assignment, and that doctors will simply reassign a patient. Castration and genital mutilation would be much more accurate. Neovagina. In the medical literature, the new cavity resulting from this surgery is called a neovagina. However, it bears as much similarity to a vagina as a trans woman does to a woman. At night, if you squint, there might be a passing resemblance, but not much past that. A neovagina is comparable to a toilet roll in terms of the functionality it has compared to an actual vagina. Giving it the same name is an insult to vaginas. It's a bit like assuming a hot dog is comparable to a poodle, as they're both dogs. Dilation. What's euphemistically called dilation is sticking a dildo into a wound to stop said wound from closing. Remember when liberal people were against genital mutilation? Cisgender. I wondered for ages why I hated this term. I don't hate the term straight, but something about cis bothered me. Then I hit on it. Straight and gay are biological realities. Trans ideology is just that, ideological. That's where the problem lies. Basically, calling yourself cis is legitimizing the other stuff in the ideology. In Islamic ideology, I could be a dhimmi. In Christianity, I could be a heretic. In Scientology, I could be a suppressive person. I reject all these terms as I reject the ideology attached to them. TERF. This has been done to death, but most gender-critical people are not radical feminists, though some are, and most radical feminists don't reject trans men, only TIMs. Trans. A lot of words associated with trans fail because they assume a kind of crossing from one state to another. Transnational means from one nation to another. Yet not much in gender ideology actually involves a true crossing. Transgender. Gender is largely the collection of behaviors and norms associated with one sex. These can be arbitrary. In America, it's ladies first. In Japan, women go last. Different time periods, too, have different standards. Women wearing trousers, for example. As gender has no fixed boundaries, it's not something that can be crossed. The second issue is that by transgender, most people mean transsexual, for example, changing the physical characteristics. Transsexual suffers from the same issue in that nothing has actually been crossed. If we stick a fur coat on a fish, we can't say it's trans species. And similarly, if we stick silicone boobs on a man, he's still a man. For this reason, trans women and trans man don't work as definitional terms, but just obscure reality. The term trans-identified man or trans-identified woman are much more accurate. I should add that male to female suffers from the same issue. The destination isn't arrived at since we never leave the point of embarkment. Finally, we come to all the terms used to describe women now that the definition of women has been widened to include men. This abuse of women and men is the gravest of all sins listed in this thread and causes the most problems. It's hard to state how much damage including something from an opposite category in a category does to the explanatory power of the term used to describe it. It renders a term mostly useless. I'd hardly believe this stupidity were possible, yet I see it on a daily basis. It would be as if white also included black, or day included night. All the features of that phenomenon, dark skies, stars, coldness, sleep, etc., would now be equally attributable to its opposite. It's sunny in the day would be incorrect because some nights are sunny. This isn't even a great example because in some countries, some nights are sunny, but it's hard to find a more essential binary than the one nature has given us in men and women. The closest is perhaps alive and dead. Anyway, since women can no longer describe the corresponding phenomenon in nature, the parts of the phenomenon need to be atomized and described individually, hence the stupid language we see so frequently these days. Birthing bodies, menstruators, people who bleed, bleeders, womb owners, etc. This whole class of dehumanizing new language springs from the acceptance of trans. Anyway, that's this thread done. I'm interested to hear what alternatives you would suggest to some of the language mentioned here.